Part 47. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 461. Chapter 461. She is Mr. S. aunt. It's so easy to disband, she said while taking care of the flowers slowly. Do you think it is so easy for an association to disband after it has developed to this day? It was not established because of a certain person, and it will not be established because of a certain person. Disbanded by a certain person. I don't have that much power. To put it bluntly, she is just a fuse, adding a piece of firewood. The reason why the Fragrance Industry Association is what it is today is entirely her own doing. The upper beam is not straight and the lower beam is crooked. If Mr. He hadn't been selfish, if He Jin hadn't been eager to make achievements to prove himself to the family, and if the entire association hadn't been focused on climbing up the ladder from top to bottom, the original intention would have been forgotten long ago. It wouldn't be like the whole thing would collapse if she poked it just a little bit. Now to outsiders, it seems that this is all due to her contribution and ability, but in fact it is not. Then, the voice is so loud now, what should we do? Leng, don't respond. In this moment of hesitation, how much is sincerity, and how much is uneasy kindness? After pruning off the excess flower branches, she turned her head and smiled softly. Do you want to? Well, if you really sit in this position, you will have a lot of responsibilities. I don't think I can shoulder such a heavy responsibility, nor do I have the ability. She was solely focused on making perfumes. She really had no experience in management and did not feel that she was competent. Those who clamored for her to take the position, except for some who were still in the mood or were dazzled by blind worship, among them were, it goes without saying that there are some malicious ones mixed in. When things slowly cool down, it's time to reorganize and rectify. There may not necessarily be a few people in the entire industry association who can match her level of perfumery, but are better than her in management and daily affairs. Should be everywhere. No matter what, I still won't join the Fragrance Industry Association. She said calmly. Madam, there are visitors outside. Ever since she made her relationship with Yao public and prepared for their marriage, he had placed several servants at home. After all, the two of them were often at home and always needed someone to take care of housework and trivial matters from time to time. And the servants also call her Madam. Su-Yun frowned and said, didn't I tell you that I won't see any visitors? Recently there have been not only a lot of phone calls, but also a lot of people coming to visit with various connections, so she will not answer any calls or visitors. But, after a moment of hesitation, the servant whispered, she said she is Mr. S. aunt. Aunt. Su-Yun's mind was about the slightly younger woman she saw in the store when she was buying a diamond ring that day. Yao's aunt, Kong wrong? Is she alone? I thought for a while and asked again. The servant nodded. Well, it looks like he brought some gifts, maybe he came to congratulate Mr. and Mrs. The family has been very happy recently. Yao said that if there is a wedding, there should be a joyful atmosphere, so the family has also been decorated, with red words of happiness posted everywhere, which seems a bit exaggerated to her. The servants also know that the master is having a happy event, so they will think that the visitor is here to congratulate them. Congratulations. Su-Yun doesn't think so. After what happened last time, she knew that Yao actually didn't have a very good relationship with his family. As for the details, she didn't ask in detail. After all, he didn't want to say it and there was a reason why he didn't say it. Now that Kong Rong came to visit suddenly, I don't know if Yao knows about it. After thinking for a moment, she turned around and called Yao. The other side picked up quickly, and Yao's voice was as low melting as fine wine. What, you missed me? Su-Yun said directly, don't interrupt, let me ask you. Your aunt is here, do you know? My aunt, she was also surprised by Yao's voice. He thought for a while and said, "Have you met her?" "Not yet," Soo-yoon said, "she is outside the door." "I don't know if you know it, so I want to ask you." "Kick her away," he said unceremoniously. Soo-yoon. She had thought that Seo might not know about this, but she didn't expect that he would ask her to chase him away. Since she hasn't seen her yet, send her away and don't want to see her. However, the servant said that she brought a lot of things, maybe she came to congratulate her. She didn't expect that Seo would be so hostile to his aunt. Congratulations, it's more like a weasel giving New Year greetings to a chicken. Seo snorted coldly and said, "Don't worry about it, just let the servant tell you that you are not feeling well and have already gone to bed, and ask her to come back another day." "Oh, I see. Since he said that, it makes sense." Soo-yoon nodded. "Then, I did this." After hanging up the phone, Soo-yoon asked the servant to send the people away, saying that she was not feeling well and had taken medicine to rest. Although the servant was puzzled, she accepted the order. Watching this wave of operations, Woo Arian was even more puzzled. Is she really his aunt? She actually asked you to send someone away without even letting her in. Thinking back, it seems that I have known him for such a long time, and I have never seen any of his relatives. If I didn't know that the SI family is a big family, I would almost think that he is alone. I don't know for sure. I only know that his relationship with the SI family is not very good. She shrugged and said it didn't matter. She would do whatever Seo said anyway. It was good not to have to deal with such a complicated family. After all, the turmoil in the Chu family had already left her with a psychological shadow. Tisk, tisk, as expected, rich families are in deep trouble. Anyway, nothing happened. Arian sat over and hugged the fruit plate and ate happily, "But I think it's good for you to be like this now. You don't have to worry about these sisters-in-law, etc. It's related, it's really troublesome. You don't have to worry." Soo-yoon glanced at her. "What?" Arian raised her head and was confused. "Soo-feng is an orphan apart from Seo, he only has a few work partners. You don't have to face these complicated relationships." He teased her, watched her blush, and then smiled and avoided the pillow she threw. "Hate, you bullied me again." "Where can I find it? I am telling the truth." The two of them were laughing and joking, and the servant from before came in again. "Madam." "What's wrong?" Soo-yoon sat up and looked at her. "He's gone." The servant shook his head. "She hasn't left yet. She's still waiting outside. She said she was waiting for Madam to get up. She's not in a hurry. She has time to wait slowly." Soo-yoon. It seems that the person who came here is really unkind. Before she even walks in, she is going to give her a blow and refuses to leave without meeting her. "Tisk, tisk, I just said you don't have to deal with these complicated relationships. I think this aunt is a bit difficult to deal with. Most people hear that today is inconvenient, so they leave and wait at the door. What important thing can be worth such a waste? And listen to that, you have time to wait slowly. Tisk tisk." End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 462. Chapter 462, Is My Aunt Just an Idler? Soo-yoon thought for a while and called Seo again. "Your aunt refused to leave and said she must see someone. It's not that she wants to become a complainer, nor is she afraid of facing his relatives and dealing with relationships that may be messy, but since Seo doesn't let her see her and tells her to stay away as much as possible, there must be a reason for it. Moreover, every time I see how he keeps it secret when mentioning his relatives, I always feel that there must be something hidden in it, the deepest thing in his heart." He frowned and said, "Just pretend you don't know. If she wants to wait, just let her wait. She has a lot of time anyway." "Okay, I get it," she said, not happy when she heard his voice. "You don't have to worry about me, Arian is here with me, I'm not bored." You can work with peace of mind, she may wait for a while and she will be bored. Gone. Yeah, Yao responded dully. Hearing his displeased tone, Soo-yoon laughed and let out a soft tisk sound. Good boy, be obedient. There were gasps from both ends of the phone. Yao didn't expect that Soo-yoon would flirt with him like this, and he immediately had the urge to fly back. On the other hand, Arian was extremely emotional. This young couple could flirt on the phone, and they really fed her to death. Wait until I get back, he said quickly in a low voice, and then hung up the phone. However, it can be heard that he must be in a much better mood. You are so good at it, how could I remember that you were not like this before, Arian said with emotion. In the past, everything she did was focused on work. In fact, even when she was passionately in love with Luo Yuanhang, she was not so bored. In fact, now that Soo-yoon thinks about it, she thought at that time that she was born to be such a cold-hearted person. In fact, it was probably just that she hadn't met the right person. Just like now, she can naturally flirt with him, say love words to him, and be affectionate spontaneously, all from the heart. Perhaps this is the sweet love of finding the right person. On the other side, Si Kongrong was sitting in the car, waiting at the gate. She didn't believe it and couldn't wait to open the door today. Even if she didn't open the door, Yao would definitely come back. If he came back, he would have to let his aunt in. She had plenty of patience to wait here. But having said that, she was also a little impatient to wait. This girl was really not a good person. She dared to let an elder like her wait at the door. Say that she feels uncomfortable and has rested, but it is just an excuse. Do you really think she doesn't understand? This hasn't been there, so I set up the shelf of being the master and mother. If I really marry it, I don't know what it will look like. This Yao is the same. He actually got married in private without even telling his mother. He really looks down on elders like them more and more. If this continues, how will he be able to live in the Si family in the future? Even though she made up her mind to wait, she still felt a little impatient. She had not been this angry for a long time. Just when I was feeling irritable, my cell phone rang. When I saw the number on it, I couldn't help but exclaimed, "Ah Yao. I heard that my aunt is coming to my house." Yao said coldly, "Why don't you say hello in advance so that I can be prepared?" "Hey, whatever you prepare is for your family. I'm just on my way, so I'll come over and take a look," she said with a smile. "But, isn't it unfortunate that I'm not at home?" he said. "Why don't you invite me back? When I have time, I will go back to my old house." "It's okay, you're not at home. Isn't my niece-in-law at home?" "It's the same thing." After a pause, she said hesitantly, "But Yao, you are a bit of an arrogant daughter-in-law. I've knocked on the door twice, but the door still won't open for me. I'm waiting at the door. But young people seem to be in the limelight recently. It's normal to have a little temper and put on airs. Auntie can understand. Auntie is just waiting here. Don't be anxious. You can do your business first." "Really? Didn't my servant tell my aunt that my wife has been feeling unwell recently and has been resting in bed without seeing outsiders? Didn't my aunt hear it or understand?" What she meant in her words was that she was clearly blaming Soo-yoon for neglecting her due to lack of etiquette, and she wanted to file a complaint in front of him. Unexpectedly, the complaint failed, and Yao was ordered to general an army instead, blaming her for listening. "Don't understand words. Ah. Really? Since that's the case, then I want to take a look even more. My nephew-in-law is not feeling well. This is not a trivial matter. Otherwise, should I take her to the hospital for a checkup?" He glanced towards the door. She thought about it and thought it was an excellent excuse. She opened the car door and got out of the car. As she walked towards the door, she said, "Hey, you men are just careless. Being uncomfortable is not a big or small thing. I'll take it with you. She goes to the hospital and calls you to let you know if anything happens. There's no need to bother, Aunt. I've already asked the doctor to check it out. As long as you rest peacefully and don't be disturbed by other people, you'll be fine. Si Yao refused decisively. Si Kongrong stood at the door, his face darkened. Yao, what do you mean by this? Is my aunt just a bastard? Maybe not. Xianzha must be, but as for others, it's hard to say. She didn't understand the meaning. She only knew that it sounded pleasant to her ears, so she softened her tone and said, yes, I'm just here to care. Besides, an ugly daughter-in-law has to meet her parents-in-law. Even if she feels embarrassed now, sooner or later she won't. I still need to meet her. I will meet her first and cheer her up. Then she will be able to get through it easily. My wife only needs to pass my test, and does not need to pass other people's test. He was rude and showed no mercy, which made Si Kongrong lose his temper. Si Yao, don't talk like a bigot. Can you leave the Si family? Can your last name not be Si? You in this life, there will be no elders and no need to interact with relatives like us. My surname is Si because my father's surname is Si. If I can't have this surname, he should tell me. Auntie, your control is too lenient, he said lightly. After being choked, Si Kongrong said, Yao, you did this to your aunt, grandma, and uncles. If my brother in heaven knew about it, he would be so heartbroken. Whether my father is grieving or has any teachings, I am willing to listen, but I have to listen to what he says personally, not who speaks through his mouth. How do I know whether what he said is what he meant or whether he was just pretending to say it? What he meant. Okay, I won't tell you so much anymore. Let's wait until you come back. After saying that, she hung up the phone and didn't want to waste any more time with him. Anyway, he was far away and couldn't care about that much. She would go first, go give that woman some color. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 463. Chapter 463. How despicable they are. Putting down her phone, she raised her hand and was about to knock on the door when she heard a horn sound, which startled her. Auntie really doesn't listen to others' advice, Si Yao said coldly, sticking his head out of the car. Si Kongrong. Wasn't he still on the phone just now? When did he come back? In other words, when he was on the phone just now, the car was already approaching. Was he looking at her and talking to her? Do you protect your wife to this extent? You were still at work, and you rushed back in such a hurry? With a sneer in her heart, she turned around and said, I'm also worried about my niece-in-law. You just happened to be back. Auntie, please go in with you. Whoever came back just followed him in naturally. How come my aunt still doesn't understand? I told Yuner that she's not feeling well and won't see outsiders. Does she have to force others to make things difficult for her? Si Kongrong frowned. You don't even want to let your aunt in, right? Yes. Unexpectedly, he answered decisively, without considering whether she had any face or not. Si Kongrong opened his eyes wide and was about to go crazy. What are you talking about? Why bother, aunt? After so many years, everyone has known it all. Do you have to make it clear? I respect you as an elder and have saved face for you time and time again. Isn't it great that we don't bother each other for so many years? Okay, Auntie took the initiative to visit us today. We don't know what Anne's intentions are, so we should stop acting here. Originally, she wanted to say a few soft words, but Si Yao was so ruthless and did not care about her status as an elder. The smile on Si Kongrong's face quickly faded and he said coldly, Yao, You have to remember. No matter what, I will always be your aunt, and your grandma will always be your grandma. You will always be a descendant of the Si family, and you can't escape this. Don't think that if your wings are hardened, we can't control you anymore. You can do whatever you want. Don't forget what your grandfather told you before he died. Your father is a filial man. Don't you even care about their words? Did you listen? She stood there, scolding her confidently, and acted like an elder. Following her words, Si Yao's face became colder and colder, and the air around him could condense into ice. Are you done? Get out of here when you're done. I haven't bothered my aunt to teach me when I've grown up, and now I don't need to. Si Kanangrong was still a little afraid of his expression. This nephew was nothing like her weak brother. His personality was too strong, and he simply refused to accept soft words. This behavior is a bit like that of his mother. Really, the more I look at it, the more annoying she becomes. Hateful as hell, she didn't dare to scold him again in this atmosphere. She pinched the bag in her hand, snorted, turned around, walked back to her car, and drove away. Seeing her car go away, Si Yao turned the car and pointed the front of the car at the gate. After scanning, the gate slowly opened. Su-Yun was just about to ask her servant to see if anyone outside had left, when she saw Si Yao striding in from the outside. He was walking very fast, whipping up a gust of wind and heading towards her. Why are you back? Su-Yun was surprised, at this point, so soon. As soon as he stood up, Si Yao hugged her tightly. Si Yao hugged her hard, lowered his head and rested his chin on her shoulder, breathing a little quickly. Clearly aware that something was wrong with him, Su-Yun was stunned for a moment, then relaxed her whole body, and gently touched his back with one hand, stroking it slowly to comfort him. Wu Arian on the side was stunned. She stared at them and suddenly felt that she was out of place here now. He reached for his things, made a leaving gesture to Su-Yun, and left quietly. There were only two of them in the room. Su-Yun didn't say anything and let him hold her like this. After holding her for a while, his breathing gradually calmed down and he was no longer so irritable. Slowly let go of his hand and looked down at her. Did it hurt you? It doesn't hurt at all, but his shoulders are a bit sore from the pressure on his head. No. Su-Yun moved her shoulders and said with a smile, why are you back at this time? Didn't I tell you not to worry? I won't let anyone open the door, and I won't go out myself. I have Arian with me. Me, what are you worried about? You don't understand, he said. You have no idea how despicable they are. She didn't quite understand who this they was talking about. There was only Si Kanangrong outside. Could it be that he was talking about the entire Si family? No matter how despicable they are still people from the outside. After closing the door, and I believe you can handle it, Su-Yun said warmly while holding his hand. Her hand was not big, but it gave him a lot of strength, and warmth continued to flow from her palm. He used to be alone and struggled to grow up in that environment, but now, he has her. He stretched out his hand to hold her in his arms and breathed a long sigh of relief. I'm sorry, I didn't control my emotions well. Putting her face against his chest, Su-Yun gently pressed her hand against him. You don't have to say sorry, let alone control your emotions. In front of me, you don't have to hide yourself. You can say whatever you want, and you can curse if you want. Cry if you want. Whoever cried, you cried. Si Yao raised his hand and scratched her nose, and Si Yao was amused by her. Her mood was indeed much better, so she simply picked her up and sat on the sofa. Put her on his lap and sit sideways, with his hands around her waist, feeling that she is much lighter. Have you lost weight because you haven't eaten well recently? I touched her waist and found that her waist was always very thin and could not fit into a hand. With her hands circled like this, it felt just right. Where is it? I haven't had much work lately, and I been busy growing grass. I hired a cook at home, and the food she cooks is so delicious. I've gained weight, you see, I've gained a lot of weight on my stomach recently. He looked down at his belly and touched his belly with his hand, indicating that he had really gained weight. Following her hand, he gently covered it, touching the flat softness. He nodded seriously. Well, he seems to be a little fatter. Hate, you really think I'm fat? She grabbed a pillow and pressed it on his face, she said, feigning anger. As she fell back, Yao easily pulled her down on top of him. You said you were fat, not me. I just agree with what you said. You can't say that. I can say it, but you can't. Women are sometimes very unreasonable. Although she is usually sensible and calm, she is a woman after all and still has a woman's nature. Okay, I won't tell you. You're not fat. You're the prettiest, with the most standard figure and the most suitable size. He rolled his eyes and nimbly slipped his fingers through the corners of her clothes. But I haven't measured you for a long time. Let me help you measure whether there is any change. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 464. Chapter 464 is all about virtue. The two played around for a while, and finally separated out of breath. Su-yun's lips were red and swollen, and she struggled to get up from him and moved to the side to sit. She can no longer sit with him, this madman. If he continues like this, she feels like she will be torn apart by him. Come here, Yao patted his leg and said in a deep voice, obviously dissatisfied with the appeal. No. Let me have a rest. After tidying up her somewhat messy clothes, she began to wonder if he came to her to ask for compensation on the pretext of being in a bad mood. Come here and rest, he insisted, patting himself again. Yao, Yao shouted his name angrily. Seeing that she refused to come, Yao got up and said, then if you don't come over, I will go over. Stop, she made a forbidding gesture and changed the subject loudly, then have you sent your aunt away? Sure enough, when he mentioned his aunt, his teasing expression immediately stiffened, and he no longer had any intention of teasing. He slowly sat down and said, yeah. Actually, this is the last time I saw her. Although I don't think your relationship is very good, I don't think she is a savage beast that will eat me. At least in terms of force, few people can hurt her. Bar. You don't understand at all, Yao said, they are not ferocious beasts, but they are more terrifying than ferocious beasts. Looking at his appearance, Su-yun was suddenly curious as to what the Si family had done to make him hate him so deeply. Okay, let's not mention them anymore. Since they have left, there is no need to think so much. Su-yun stood up and walked over to pull him. It's rare for you to come back so early, so please go out with me. Where to go? Yao raised his eyes to look at her. Let's go shopping. We haven't been shopping together for a long time. I want to buy some clothes. He raised his eyebrows. It was rare to hear her take the initiative to buy clothes. He thought that she would only buy spices and various raw materials. She was not that particular about eating and wearing. Don't look at me like this, I also need to wear clothes, Su-yun said helplessly as she could see what was in his eyes at a glance. Really? In fact, you can choose not to wear it, I don't mind. He looked up and down. Although he had had the most intimate contact more than once, just thinking about it still made his blood boil. I mind, Su-yun said loudly, pulling him hard. Get up quickly, let's go out together, I'm almost suffocated at home. Although she often stayed at home and didn't go out much in the past, and she didn't have that much enthusiasm or desire for shopping, there is still a fundamental difference between staying at home on her own initiative and being forced to stay at home, at least in her heart. It feels different. It felt really good to be held by her hand. Yao lazily didn't want to move and looked up at her. You haven't been going out recently? Why, aren't you afraid of the paparazzi outside? Don't be afraid, When she said this, she suddenly let go of her hand. Get up quickly and I'll change my clothes. She ran upstairs with a smile, looking quite excited. Seeing her looking so happy, Sci-Yao felt that any gloom in his heart had been blown away. Sit up straight and look up at the enlarged photo of the two hanging in the living room. That photo was not really a wedding photo, it was just a photo taken on a whim, but he liked it very much, and so did she. The two people in the photo both smiled sweetly, clinging tightly to each other, inseparable, as if no third person could fit in between them. This feeling is very good, he is hers, she is his, they belong to each other, no third person can get in between them, no one can. Not long after, I heard the sound of kicking on the stairs, and then, as soon as Sci-Yao raised his eyes, he saw a man in strange clothes standing on the stairs. He was wearing a big hooded jacket, a pair of loose trousers, and a pair of sunglasses that covered half of his face. There are black masks. With the cover up like this, it's true that you can't see who she is, but are you sure it won't attract more attention? On such a hot day, if she covers herself up like this, will people think she is some bad person? Are you sure you want to go out like this? Sci-Yao asked her. It's okay, I think all celebrities are like this, they are professional in preventing paparazzi. She pulled up the zipper, feeling a little proud. Although it was a bit hot, after looking in the mirror for a long time, she felt that she didn't even recognize herself, let alone the people outside, so she could go shopping with him without any worries. Shaked his head, Sci-Yao didn't want to pour cold water on her, as long as she was happy. Only Su-Yun obviously forgot something. Although she has been in the limelight recently, with a bunch of media squatting and preparing to swarm to interview her, in comparison, Sci-Yao next to her is even more eye-catching. Sci-Yao himself is an extremely powerful shining point. Being so close to him is simply the biggest scandal of the century. Let's go, she said enthusiastically as she stepped forward to hold his arm. Sci-Yao curled his lips and looked down at his little wife. She was so cute. What? At the SI family's old house, MRSSI howled, you said that woman didn't even let you in. No. SI Kongrong's face dropped, he held a handkerchief in one hand, his eyes were red. I brought a lot of gifts. Although Yao looks like that, he is still my nephew. He is my nephew. If you want to get married, I, as an aunt, can't help but express it. Also, that girl has been very prosperous recently. It seems that she wants to do something else, the president of the Perfumery Industry Association. Those are all rumors, and they haven't been decided yet, MRSSI said unhappily as she punched the ground with her cane. Yes, but that's not important. I clearly heard a sound inside. Also, if she was really uncomfortable, why didn't the servant tell me at the beginning? Instead of telling me after she went in to tell her, she went in to tell me. It's been a long time since I've been saying this. It's obvious that he doesn't want to see me. Si Kongrong was next to the old lady, holding onto the armrest of her chair with one hand. Mom, I actually have nothing to do, but I'm worried that if this girl has such a temper, she will be as virtuous as a Yao's mother in the future. With a sullen face and furrowed brows, the old lady became very unhappy when she mentioned this person. She lowered her brows and said, I told you not to mention that woman. Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot. But Mom, don't be too angry. Maybe I misunderstood and she might really be feeling unwell. Forget it, I'll go another day. It's not the right time to go today. It's not the right time. You are the elder and she is the junior. No matter how uncomfortable you are, it is always the most basic etiquette to get up and say hello. After snorting, MRSSI said unhappily, I didn't expect that old man Chu actually taught such an uncultured granddaughter. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 465. Chapter 465, Being Laughed at a Lot. Hey, who knows, I originally thought that the Chu family was a big family and we were a good match, but I didn't expect, S.I. Kong wrong side, as if he didn't know what to say for a moment. The Chu family is not a big family now. With a snort, a very thin man with a shallow scar on his face came over. The Chu family's fame was only because of the descendants of the ancient martial arts family, but after so many years, well, what outstanding figures have come out of their family. Forget about the previous generations, they have already declined by old man Chu's generation. That old man Chu is like a shrunken turtle. He only knows how to hide in his turtle shell all day long. He teaches many disciples, but he says he doesn't cause trouble and only wants to strengthen his body. It is obvious that he is not strong enough and is deliberately bluffing. In today's generation, it's even more impossible. He slowly sat down next to the chair. That Chu Chen and old Chu are both cut from the same mold. They are both cowards. I originally thought that Chu Zinggao might be able to cause a scene, but I didn't expect that he was even more useless. The Chu family is completely ruined. How can it compare with our Si family? Yes, Chinjai is right. Let me tell you, I didn't look down on that girl from the beginning. I still remember that she came to our house to play when she was a child. At that time, she looked pretty good and she was pretty. It's a pity that the child was too tough and her parents were killed. I didn't hear much about her in the past 2 years, but she suddenly came out. Old MRSSI nodded repeatedly. She only had a vague impression of Suyun in her mind. Even though she is now with her grandson, I haven't looked at her photos because I don't like her. I probably still have the impression of her childhood. This girl has been quite noisy in the past 2 years. She is surrounded by lawsuits and what kind of love triangle? I really don't know how a Yao could fall in love with such a woman. Our Si family is looking for a wife, and what kind of famous daughter can't be found? Mom, you don't know. When I go out to have a beauty treatment with my friends, I'm embarrassed to say anything. What did you say? Did our Si family recognize her? MRSSI snorted and said unhappily. Whether you admit it or not, Ayao and her have received the certificates, and everyone outside knows about them. So what if she gets it? When she gets here, when she gets to our Si family, if I don't admit it, I won't admit it. As long as I don't admit it, she is not from the Si family and is not my granddaughter-in-law. Standing up with a cane, she squinted her eyes slightly and said, "Calm down, you and I will go to Ayao's place again tomorrow." "Mom, are you going to?" Si Kong Rong asked in surprise. "I'm going to see what's so special about that little vixen." She had a look of disdain on her face. "All kinds of fairies have to show their foxtails here." After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something again, and turned to look at Si Chinjai who was standing aside. "Chinjai, is Miss Yu coming over in the next 2 days? Remember to spend time with me, and don't keep getting rid of your bad habits." "Mom, what's wrong with me? I'm a man, and it's not normal for men to have little quirks," Si Chinjai retorted dissatisfiedly. "I don't care what little quirks you have, just put them away first. The Yu family's marriage to us this time will be of great benefit to you and the Si family. Ayao has been nothing more than your father's uncle for so many years. If you could live up to your expectations of the country you conquered, why wouldn't your father pass the family fortune on to you and that little bastard? It's obviously my father who is partial. Dad has always been partial to his eldest brother and his son. Who would pass the family business directly to his grandson over his son? After so many years, how many people outside have laughed at me because of this?" Speaking of this, Si Chinjai felt angry. The circle he hangs out in is mostly composed of young masters from wealthy families. Although not all of them may inherit the family business, it is nothing more than a brotherly rivalry. Who will compete with his nephew like him? To be precise, there was not even a chance to fight. While the old man was still alive, He had already made a decision and handed over the company and other industries to Si Yao's hands step by step. No matter how dissatisfied he was, he did not dare to confront the old man at that time. He could only watch what should have been his own become someone else's. Because of this, I was laughed at a lot, overtly and covertly. People outside laugh at you because they are short-sighted. Why are you angry? Old MRSSI glanced at him from the corner of her eye. How many times have I told you, people should always be able to bend and stretch, you only by enduring hardship can you become a master. Wait patiently for the opportunity. Now, isn't the good time coming? Do you really think that just Miss You can make me get what I want? With a snort, Si Chinjai had some expectations, but his hopes were not high. You are the eldest elder of our Si family, as a grandma, he won't listen to you, how can you expect him to take the initiative to hand over the power? MRSSI nodded, you're right, just wait for him to let go. Don't underestimate Miss Yu. The Yu family is a serious ancient martial arts family. They live in seclusion on the floating island, but they have been living in seclusion for so many years. There are rumors about them. I heard that many disciples of the Yu family have been recruited as agents. They not only have strong strength, but also have wide connections and abundant resources. It will be of great help to you to get married to such a family. The old lady said earnestly, think about that girl again. The Chu family is in trouble now. She has no backing, so she is nothing more than a threat. The more Si Chinjai listened, the more he felt that what the old lady said made sense. After all, she was someone who had been through it and saw things thoroughly. I know, I'll make an appointment with Miss Yu tomorrow. He was so excited that he thought that through this woman, he might be able to get what he wanted. He couldn't help but gear up and wish he could get married now. Get married directly where you are. Miss Yu is the apple of the eye of the Yu family. She may have a high spirit and a bit of a weird temper. I heard that she is very indifferent to people. It's best to restrain your bad temper and don't make her angry. Hearing this, Si Chinjai was a little unhappy. She has so many shortcomings, why do I have to have her? Can't I find another well-matched lady? The old lady rolled her eyes at him, you are the only one who is a socialite. Don't you know what your reputation is outside? You look down on ordinary people. Anyone who is even close to our family will have their eyes fixed on Ayao. Who is it, will think of you. If Miss Yu doesn't have these shortcomings, why do you think it's your turn? After scolding a few times, he took a breath and said, don't think too much, the worst is just to coax you too much, and you will be nothing more than the eldest lady temper. Be patient for the sake of the future. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 466. Chapter 466, Can I Still Bite Myself? Si Yao went to the company early in the morning. He had several important meetings today and his schedule was quite full. Relatively speaking, Su Yun has been much freer recently. She has not taken on any other work and is ready to worry about the wedding process and what needs to be prepared. Although I don't really care about this kind of formality, since I have to do it, of course I have to do it well. Si Yao is quite busy, so she can take care of these things by herself. Wedding dresses, banquets, household items, etc. are not big problems. The only thing you have to hesitate is about the invitations. Until now, Si Yao has not officially brought her to meet his family, let alone to the old house, and he seems to be very resistant, so whether he should invite or how many people should be invited, these are all matters. Question. Maybe it's because I've been too busy recently. Not only did I not have a job, but I also avoided being harassed by phone calls. Instead, I got sick during my free time. I woke up around noon, feeling dizzy. I almost fell down when I got out of bed, and my vision was blurred. I barely managed to push myself to wash up, and then I was going to go downstairs to eat something, but I didn't have any strength at all, and I didn't have much appetite. I took out a thermometer and took a temperature measurement. It was 39 degrees, and I had a fever. What a ghost. She has always been in good health as she has grown up. She rarely gets a fever, and colds and coughs are rare. She didn't expect that she would have a fever now that she is so free. I poured a glass of boiled water and drank it, then simply lay on the bed again, covered myself with the quilt and thought about squinting for a while, but there was a knock on the door. "Madam, madam." It was the servant's voice, cautious but persistent. "Are you awake?" Soo-yoon frowned and said lazily, "What's the matter?" She told her not to disturb her if there was nothing important, so even if she missed the meal time, the servant never came to knock on the door. Now that she is here, something must have happened. "There is someone outside who wants to see you." After a pause, the servant raised her voice. She said she is the husband's grandmother. He quickly added, "By the way, the person who said she was your husband's aunt yesterday is also there." Soo-yoon rolled her eyes silently and looked at the ceiling helplessly. It seems that there is no need to worry about whether to invite people from the Si family. They came to the door on their own initiative. Yesterday it was aunt, today it is grandma and aunt. If she continues to refuse today, will the entire Si family be affected the day after tomorrow? The kiss is coming? Madam, should you tell them you are not feeling well and send them away? For a servant, it is quite strange. After all, she is the master's grandma, aunt, and a direct relative, but her husband would point out and refuse to let in. But after all, they are working and don't talk too much. They do whatever their master tells them to do. No need. Yet she struggled to get up, walked over and opened the door. The servant was startled when he saw her. "Madam, why are you face so red?" "I have a fever. Go get the anti-fever medicine from home first." She also needs to slow down and let her mind clear up before she thinks about it. "I called Si Yao yesterday. He asked me to send Si Kongrong away, and he came back not long after. He was obviously worried, and after seeing Si Kongrong at the door, his mental state was not good. It took him a long time to calm down, which had a big impact on him. He is so busy today. He has 3 meetings early in the morning. If I call him again, will it make him uneasy and make him drop everything he is doing and rush back?" She is a little impatient to deal with such a complicated relationship, but when she is with him, these are unavoidable, and there will even be more such situations in the future. Do she have to ask him for help every time? Although he pampered and protected herself enough, it was precisely because of this that she had to stand up, be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, be able to deal with it with ease on her own, and not hold him back or let him worry about herself. After taking the medicine and drinking a glass of water, I felt a little better and had more strength than before. "Madam, are you feeling better? Do you want to go to the hospital?" the servant asked worriedly. Soo-yoon shook her head. "Do you have anything to eat at home? I've cooked pumpkin and millet porridge and it's still warm. Do you want to eat it? Put a bowl for me and put it on the table to cool down. I'll go down right away," she said. "By the way, put the porridge in it and let the people in." "Ah, yes," the servant responded and went to do it. Soo-yoon stood up with one hand on the table. She felt that her legs were still a little weak. She looked in the mirror and saw that her face was a little pale, so she put on a little makeup to make the color on her face look better. Come on, they can still bite you. If the visitor is a guest, then treat them well. If the visitor is unkind, use a big stick to blow them out. How can you turn them upside down in your own territory?" Outside the door, Si Kongrong fanned himself while also fanning the old lady. It was noon, the sun was shining brightly, and the two of them were a little tired of being exposed to the sun outside. The old lady frowned even more. showing impatience. Mom, you saw, that's how I got rejected yesterday, Si Konangrong said while fanning himself. This is pretty good, they didn't reject us directly, but you see, it takes so long to report. As far as our family's affairs are concerned, people will laugh to death if I tell them. How can a grandma go to her grandson's house and have to be blocked outside and wait for notification? This Ayao, at least he knew some etiquette before, but I think after being fascinated by this woman, he became more and more outrageous, she said. He snorted and said unhappily. The dissatisfaction from yesterday to today has accumulated, and MRSC's face became more and more ugly as she spoke. Have you said enough? Aren't you still hot? She was upset, and her boss was even more upset when she kept making noises. But from the bottom of my heart, I don't like this granddaughter-in-law whom I haven't officially met yet. Do you think you, the little vixen, can kidnap your grandson by bypassing you? Don't think you don't know what she's up to. Those women who pester Si Yao are all thinking about the Si family's property and money. She originally thought that with Si Yao's temperament, he would definitely look down on those Ying-Yin-Yan, and at most he would just act on the occasion, but she didn't expect that one inattentive person actually took all the certificates. But thinking back, this is also in line with his temperament. He has been disobedient since he was a child, and he never obeys his own thoughts at all. He just wants to go against him. The same goes for his mother. After the older one dies, there is still a younger one left to annoy her. She wanted to see what kind of woman could subdue this disobedient brat. Just as I was thinking about it, the door made a sound and opened. You too, my wife invites you, the servant said. End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 467. Chapter 467, Tools to Carry on the Family Line. Old MRSSI had put on a good show and was determined to give her a showdown. However, when she entered the door and saw no one, she frowned and asked, "Where's that girl?" She used that girl instead of your wife, so she had no intention of treating Suyun as the hostess here. The servant hesitated and was about to say that my wife was not feeling well when she heard footsteps coming up the stairs. Suyun had already come downstairs. Hearing the sound, MRSSI and Si Kongrong looked up together and saw Suyun holding onto the handrail of the stairs with one hand and walking down slowly. She has not had much work recently, so she does everything casually at home. In addition, she is not feeling well due to illness today, so her hair is left hanging naturally. Her hair had grown very long, reaching past her shoulders. As she moved downstairs, it naturally fell down, covering half of her cheeks. Because she felt uncomfortable with a fever, she moved downstairs very slowly, which made her look a bit, the smell of delicate beauty. Si calmly glanced at her and was surprised by her beauty. I saw her last time in a diamond shop, but it was quite far away, and I didn't take her seriously that time, so I didn't pay much attention to her. Today I saw her carefully, and her appearance was indeed amazingly beautiful. No wonder she was so beautiful. That kid Ayao was fascinated. Thinking of this, and then thinking of the humiliation of being blocked at the door yesterday and unable to even get in, I became very angry and lost all face. Humph, he snorted lightly, raised his chin, and assumed the posture of an elder. Suyun knew that they came with bad intentions, so she didn't take their attitude seriously, let alone take it seriously. He came downstairs and sat down on the sofa. He took a small blanket on the side and put it loosely on himself. He said to the servant in a gentle voice, "Go and pour me a glass of warm water." From the beginning to the end, I never looked at the two people in front of me. How could MRSSI endure such a completely neglectful attitude? She banged her cane on the ground and said coldly, "Are you Suyun?" "I am Suyun, who are you?" Suyun then raised her eyes to look at her. Her eyes did not dodge, and her words were neither humble nor arrogant. Unexpectedly, She was so calm. MRSC's face darkened. Don't you know who I am? I am Si Yao's grandma. Oh, he responded lightly, indicating that he understood, but there was no other expression, and he didn't even respectfully call grandma. Si Kanangrong on the side couldn't help it anymore and scolded her, do you have any rules? You don't even scream when you see grandma. As a junior, don't you have such self-consciousness and courtesy? Faced with her yelling and scolding, Suyun just raised her eyelids and glanced in her direction coldly. Excuse me, what about you? You. Si Kongrong was angry and wanted to get angry, but the old lady Si beside her said, she is Si Yao's aunt. In terms of seniority, you should also call her aunt. Oh, she responded again, just as the servant brought hot water, she took it, maybe it felt a little hot, and put it on the coffee table in front of her. I know your parents passed away early, but the Chu family is a big family after all. Haven't they taught you some rules? Don't you know how to deal with your elders at all? Old MRSSI came up and poked at her sore spot. The early death of her parents has always been a hidden pain in her heart, but now she said this first when she came up. Suyun frowned slightly. I only know that politeness is mutual. You two came here suddenly, I didn't know you, I don't know what to call him, what should I call him? Then you know now, Si Kanangrong said immediately, why don't you call me? You just introduced yourself, how do I know if what you said is true or false? You. Si Kanangrong felt that she did it on purpose and wanted to step forward and slap her twice. MRSSI raised her hand and said, okay, is there any fun in talking nonsense here? You know in your heart whether I am Si Yao's grandma or not, and I also know who you are. I am not here today to play Tai Chi with you, a little girl, in circles. I only want to say one thing, I want to enter Si Yao's house. You have to pass my level. You have to know that Si Yao's level is nothing. Whether I can pass this level is the most important thing. Suyun chuckled. Seeing that instead of being nervous, she actually laughed, MRSSI narrowed her eyes and said, why are you laughing? You don't believe it? No, I just laughed at you as if you made a mistake. I didn't want to enter C's house. You don't want to marry Si Yao, she asked with some doubts. Whether I want to marry Si Yao or not, and whether I want to enter the Si family's door, seem to be two different things. When I marry Si Yao, I'm marrying him. As for whether I can enter the Si family's door, whether I want to or not is not the same thing. I don't care about C's door, and I don't care. As for whether you want to pass your test. She stopped here and laughed again, I'm sorry, I really don't care. After all, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you. Si Kongrong was speechless. She was shocked by these words. This little girl dared to talk to the old lady like this. I think back then, my mother-in-law gave her the same instructions. She had the Si family as her backer, so she didn't dare to say a word. But what did she say? Wasn't she going to live with the old lady for the rest of her life? This is not about spending the rest of your life with anyone, okay? Sure enough, MRSC's face looked very ugly, her face was livid, and she looked very angry. Little girl, you are so courageous, do you really think that I can't do anything to you? Do you think that with my grandson supporting you, you have nothing to fear? Old lady, you are wrong. The only one who can support me is myself. I don't need others to support me, and I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. Si Yao and I are together, and that is the choice of the two of us. I won't like or dislike him because of other people's interference. In the same way, I won't be with him or not be with him because of others' words. This little girl is very sharp-tongued. MRSSI began to feel that she was a bit more difficult to deal with than she thought. She rolled her eyes and said, you won't get what you want. Suyun didn't understand what she meant, raised her eyebrows, and said nothing. Her confusion turned into hesitation in the eyes of the old lady. The old lady laughed and said, "After living at this age, I still don't understand the methods of you little girls. I also know what you want. I will give you money to leave. You are very smart. Of course you know how much benefit you will get from following Sci-Yao, but..." After a pause, she curved her lips and smiled a little proudly. "You may not know that our Si family has family rules. Even if you marry Sci-Yao, you won't get a cent of the Si family's property. Even in the future. If you give birth to a child, the property will only belong to the child and not to you. In the final analysis, you are just a tool to carry on the family lineage of our family." End of this chapter. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 468. Chapter 468, Has Auntie made enough trouble? These words were so cruel that even Si Kanangrong took a breath, feeling that her mother was a mother after all, and her words struck a chord. What the mother said was right. Why do girls like them marry into rich families? It's not just for wealth and power, but tell her clearly that you can't get it. Even after you give birth to a child, you still won't get it. If one day I got divorced and lost both my life and money. This was really shocking. Thinking about it from her perspective, if her mother-in-law had told her this, she would definitely not be able to bear it. Su-Yun fell silent as expected. I felt a little secretly proud, thinking that she must have been shocked and couldn't digest it. But what does the look she gave her mean? Why is it so weird? Before she could think about it, she heard Su-Yun say, "Grandma, you have suffered." MRSSI. Si Kong wrong. Is this girl crazy? Or does she think that by pleasing herself in this way and saying a few nice words, she can change her impression of her and let her go? It turns out that you have been in the Si family for decades, and you are just a tool. At this age, you still have nothing. It is really not easy for you. I wouldn't be able to do it if it were me. Fortunately, I have my own career. You won't be left with nothing, she said with emotion, and looked at MRSSI with particularly sympathetic eyes. Si Kongrong didn't even turn this corner in his mind, and didn't even think about what she was talking about. Why did her mother become a tool? It was clear that her mother was telling her whether she was good or not, but did she understand it? Old MRSSI reacted very quickly, and she immediately understood that she was using her own words to counterattack him. She said that the rules of the Si family were not to distribute property to the daughter-in-law, even after giving birth to children. Now Su-Yun was insinuating that she had stayed in the Si family all her life, but could not get anything. He has nothing, because even his children are not his own. The old lady was so angry that she said, "She has sharp teeth and a sharp mouth." "Grandma, you said this. I don't understand." "Did I understand it wrong?" Su-Yun blinked with an innocent look on her face. Old MRSSI is speechless. She can't say that what she said is wrong. It means that she is qualified to divide the Si family's property, and she will be even more arrogant. Hans trembled with anger, but he couldn't think of a suitable retort, so he could only roar, "Don't call me grandma, I don't have a granddaughter-in-law like you, and I don't recognize you." "Okay," Su-Yun agreed readily, as if she was waiting for her words. This time, MRSU became even more angry. "Then do you have anything else, old lady? If not, I won't accompany you." After saying that, she stood up and prepared to go upstairs. Seeing that she was about to leave, but still so arrogant, Si Kongrong jumped up in anger and turned around to look, just in time to see the cup of hot water on the coffee table. Just now he saw that she felt hot after touching it, so he put it on the coffee table and never touched it. Si Kongrong's eyes flashed with cruelty, and he directly picked up the glass of water and said, "Stinky girl." Su-Yun instinctively stopped and turned around, and the cup of hot water was thrown in her face. Surprised, Soo-yoon mainly didn't expect that they would actually take action. After all, they were both famous ladies. Without any precautions, she could only subconsciously step back. But it was only a moment. She felt a gust of wind in front of her eyes. There seemed to be a solid wall in front of him, and he was not burned at all. Heaven! Si Kongrong exclaimed and looked at the person in front of him with wide eyes. She never expected that at this moment, coincidentally at this moment, Si Yao would come back. Not only did he come back, he also rushed over to help Soo-yoon block the cup of hot water, protecting her firmly behind him. Ayo, old MRSSI couldn't help but call out, looking at him angrily and helplessly. Auntie, have you had enough trouble? Si Yao said in a deep voice with a cold face. It is true that he is having a meeting in the company, but he knows very well the moral character of his family members. Yesterday, my aunt was rejected. She will definitely not give up so easily. What he will do is not easy to predict, but he always has to be on guard. Sure enough, today, she came to the door with her grandma. Unexpectedly, Soo-yoon opened the door for them. Fortunately, he asked the servant at home to call him if there was any situation. He left the company's affairs behind and briefly explained a few words. He hurried back. I came back in time. As soon as I stepped through the door, I saw this thrilling scene and rushed over without thinking too much. Ah yeah. Si Kongrong's voice trembled, and she poured a glass of water on him. A large piece of his shirt was wet, revealing the skin color underneath. Are you okay? She turned around and looked at Soo-yoon's body carefully, for fear of missing something. Soo-yoon was stunned, but she didn't expect that he would rush back and help her block the glass of water. He lowered his head and looked at the area in front of his lower abdomen. It felt like he had been burned through the fabric, and he said, "You're burned. Take off your clothes and run cold water." She said nervously, and was busy unbuttoning his clothes. Hands trembled, and just looking at the faint red made me feel heartbroken. It doesn't matter, it's okay. He held her hand and indicated with his eyes that there were still two people there. Soo-yoon didn't care who else was there now, all she could see and think about was that he was injured. No, you have to rush cold water and apply ointment, otherwise it will blister. She had been accidentally burned before. If not treated in time, the burn would have been serious, with blistering, pus, and bleeding. Just thinking about it made her feel very painful. It really doesn't matter, he held her hand tightly and asked her to calm down, making sure that she was not injured. Then he turned to look at Si Kongrong. I thought that after yesterday, Aunt would understand what I meant. Now it seems you still don't understand. Since Grandma is here today, it's just right. You have met me, and we have collected the certificates. We will hold a wedding next month. I have no plans to invite you, and I don't think you will want to come. From now on, you and I will. It's better not to come again, lest everyone is unhappy. Why bother? He said coldly, without any mercy. MRSSI looked at him with wide eyes. Ayo, do you know what you are talking about? I am your grandma. Just because you are my grandma and you are my aunt, you can still stand here well, otherwise, you should know what will happen to those who offend me. His eyes at this moment were like those of a bloodthirsty wolf, making people feel intimidated just by looking at him. Those eyes, that look, reminded old MRSSI of her husband, and she couldn't help but tremble. Deep down, she was still a little afraid. You. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Si Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 469. Chapter 469, Feeling sorry for him. Even though MRSSI is so fierce now, She has actually been afraid of her husband all her life. When Mr. Si was still alive, she didn't dare to say a word. The old man was in charge of this family, so even if she didn't like her eldest daughter-in-law or her grandson, the old man liked her, taught her carefully, and even passed on the family business to her. Give it to him, no matter how dissatisfied the old lady is, she can't say a word. It wasn't until the old man passed away that she finally had a say in the family. She felt that she was powerful and wanted to take charge of everything. But at this time, Yao had grown up and didn't listen to her words very much. She disliked this grandson even more. He moved out of C's house and lived outside all year round. She could let him go. Anyway, it was okay if he wasn't an eyesore. Good. But now that he wants to get married and marry a woman into the Si family, she cannot ignore her. I came here with the intention of giving this woman a showdown, but I didn't expect him to come back and protect her like this. Looking at him, he looked exactly like the way the boss protected his wife back then, which made her even more angry. Yao. Don't forget that I am your grandma, she stood up and said angrily. Of course I know. Not only do I remember that you are my grandma, I also remember how grandma treated me, our family, and my parents since I was a child, he said coldly. Grandma, you are also the same. It's time to enjoy your old age in peace. Our Si family is not prosperous, but you have many children and grandchildren. It's not difficult to have grandchildren, so don't worry too much about other things. The insinuation of these words was very strong, and Mrssi was so angry that she was shaking all over. Your wings are stiff. Grandma is right. My wings are strong. Otherwise, how can I support the huge family business of the Si family? How can I let the whole family of the Si family live in peace and quiet so that I can have the leisure to bother other people? It's something. He raised his head and didn't flinch at all. Seeing that the situation was not right, nothing could be done if he continued to spend so much time. In addition, he had been impulsive just now. Si Kongrong felt guilty and hurriedly pulled the old lady and said, Mom, you see you are tired today, and your body can't bear it. Yes, why don't we go back and rest first? Ayao, go change your clothes quickly and apply some ointment. That water, I didn't mean it. After a moment of hesitation, she said tactfully. This is the lowest posture she can put down. It is impossible to apologize. As an elder, how can she apologize to a junior, let alone it is not spilled on her? Don't worry about it, Auntie Si Yao snorted and said with a cold face. Si Kongrong lowered his head and supported his mother. Mom, let's go back first and let the young couple rest. Humph, old Mrssi was also very angry. She snorted heavily and walked forward slowly. As he was about to reach the door, he heard Si Yao say, wait a minute. They stood still and turned around in confusion, thinking that he had changed his mind and wanted to keep them, but before they could speak, they heard him say again, come here, take all the things they brought back to their car. Our family, no need for these things. The flesh on Mrsc's face trembled. Okay, you are such a good grandson of mine. This time he turned his head sharply and left without looking back. Seeing everyone leaving, Suyun couldn't wait any longer and couldn't wait to unbutton his buttons. Let me see how the perm is. Why did you rush over? That glass of water wasn't too hot. It's not that I can't avoid it, even if I can't avoid it, it doesn't matter. She was angry and anxious. This person was really using his body to block the hot water. What if he got burned? Seeing that she was nervous and talking to herself, a pair of small hands hurriedly unbuttoned him, but the more anxious she became, the more messy she became. He couldn't help but laugh, gently held her hand and said, since the water is not too hot, it doesn't matter what you are anxious about. Hey, if you have the time to talk, can you unbutton it yourself? The burn can be big or small, it's not a joke. Suyun was about to get angry. Why didn't this person know how to cherish his own body? You said that. Sci-fi raised his eyebrows, with a meaningful smile on his lips. He slid his fingers down his clothes, touched the buttons, and slowly unbuttoned one, two. It was a very common action, but for some reason, Soo-yoon felt like she was watching his fingers fly lightly on the buttons, and the delicate buttons opened silently under his movements, revealing the skin underneath. My heartbeat suddenly accelerated, and my throat was very dry, so I swallowed unconsciously. Do you want to? The change in her expression could be seen clearly. Sci-Yao chuckled. Just as he was about to tease her, the next second, his clothes were torn apart. A few buttons were scattered on the ground due to the violence, making a silent cry, and his clothes were torn apart and spread to both sides. Sci-Yao. It's all red, and it's still scratching, Soo-yoon said angrily, pulling him to sit on the sofa, and then turned to tell someone, go get the burn ointment. You are. He has never seen such a violent side of her, but, I like it very much. Does it hurt? Soo-yoon focused all her attention on the hot red area on his body, which felt very painful just looking at it. Although I have been injured a lot in the past, especially when practicing martial arts, major and minor injuries are inevitable, and sometimes I will get minor injuries when doing experiments, but I really didn't feel anything when it happened to me, but when it happened to him, I would feel it. Heartache. This feeling is very subtle. It does not hurt myself, but it seems to hurt my heart. It doesn't hurt. Sci-Yao smiled, and even felt that the injury was really wonderful. Originally, I was very angry with Si Kanangrong, but it was not all without gain. At least I saw her nervousness and distress, and felt sorry for him. It was worth it. Still trying to be brave, Soo-yoon felt that he was trying to hold on. She pouted and leaned over to blow air gently. She was so red. Although the skin and flesh were not damaged, how could it not hurt? The cool wind blew on his lower abdomen, which was cool and a little numb. Sci-Yao looked at her approaching her, pouting cutely, curling up the corners of her lips, and suddenly straightened her waist. She originally pouted to blow on the burned area, but when he moved like this, her lips directly touched his lower abdomen. Soo-yoon. It still hurt a little when he touched the burned area, but her soft lips and the wonderful feeling of contact made him enjoy it very much. The servant came over with the medicine box. When he saw this scene, his face suddenly became hot. Madam. Soo-yoon came back to her senses in shock, and Soo-yoon quickly sat up straight, covering up her embarrassment and trying to look as normal as possible. Bring it over. End of this chapter. Shao's sweet wife, she is doted on. Author, Jin Yet. Chapter 470. Chapter 470. You passed out. Taking the ointment and opening the box, Soo-yoon gently dipped a little of the ointment into the red area with her finger. To Sci-Yao, this small injury was nothing, but when her fingers were touched by the cold ointment and applied to her skin, she had to admit that it was still very comfortable. Waves of cool feeling penetrated through his skin. He was originally going to reject it, but he actually enjoyed it. He stretched out his body, tilted his head back, and let her little hand slide on his belly. However, as the ointment is gradually applied, in addition to a slight sense of coolness, there is also an indescribable sense of restlessness. That hot feeling rose from his lower abdomen and went all the way up, making his mouth dry. Soo-yoon focused all her attention on the red area. Although the shock in her heart was relieved a lot, she was still very touched. He actually rushed over at that moment. It was his grandma, his aunt, no matter what. No matter how bad their previous relationship was, they were all his relatives in the end, but for her, they would stand in front of him, protect her, and confront them. I often hear people talking about a sense of security. It's hard to say what sense of security is, but at this moment, Soo-yoon felt that the greatest sense of security was nothing more than this. After applying the ointment, Soo-yoon closed the lid of the ointment box, then gently put it aside. She turned her head and was about to see if it was better and whether it should be separated with gauze or something, but he stretched out his hand and pulled it, almost falling on him. "Be careful of your injuries," she exclaimed, supporting the side with one hand so as not to press on his burned area. "It doesn't matter, it's just a minor injury. Besides, you haven't been on medicine." He disagreed and moved his body to the side so that she could lie down on his side. Perceiving his intention, Soo-yoon struggled not to lie down. "Be honest, you are injured." "You mean you can be dishonest without getting hurt," he said with a smile. Soo-yoon. She obviously didn't mean it this way. This person can really distort understanding. "I don't think the injury is serious." "Then you have a rest." "I'm going back to the room first," she said as she stood up, looking a little angry. Sci-Yao hurriedly tightened her wrist. No, I'm actually quite seriously injured. Look, it's almost blistering." As if to confirm his words, Soo-yoon groaned. Soo-yoon took it seriously and hurriedly stretched her head to look over, but he held her waist and refused to let go. "I haven't gotten up yet, but if you leave, then I might get up." Glib tongue, unable to break free from his pull, Soo-yoon scolded, and then started coughing. She was already feeling unwell, so she took medicine and managed to come downstairs. After fighting with the two actors for a while, although she didn't get burned, her physical strength was exhausted, and now she felt a little dizzy. "Yes. What's wrong with you?" Sensing something was wrong with her, Sci-Yao asked quickly. Seeing her coughing, he half-sided up and raised his hand to touch her forehead. "Do you have a fever?" Soo-yoon felt uncomfortable, so she didn't move his hand away and let his hand test her forehead. "I have a fever, but I just took medicine. Now I may have a fever again." "I'm fine, I might have a cold." "I'll be fine if I rest." She closed her eyes, feeling a little tired. Fortunately, she hasn't had much work on her hands recently, so she can rest. With her body, she will probably be much better in 2 days. "Why is it okay? It's so hot. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Sci-Yao's face changed. He felt the temperature of her forehead under his hand, which was frighteningly hot. "I'll take you to the hospital." "You don't have to be so exaggerated, I'll just take some medicine and I won't have to go to the hospital," she said, but coughed a few more times. How could Sci-Yao feel relieved when she was like this? "No, even if there is nothing wrong, I still have to go to the hospital. The doctor said everything is fine. Now, I have to go to the hospital." His temper is scary even when he is stubborn, and there is no way he can be defeated. In addition, she was not feeling well and had little strength, so she could only let him hold her up horizontally, and then quickly walked outside. "Put her in the car and drive to the hospital." Soo-yoon was sitting in the passenger seat. She had no energy left to speak and didn't really want to say anything. She just wanted to have a good sleep. She reluctantly opened her eyelids and watched him get into the driver's seat, then start the car and move her dry lips. "I'm really fine, I just want to sleep for a while." "I said, don't go to the hospital." Cough. "Shut up. Don't talk," Sci-Yao said in a deep voice, with a terrifyingly gloomy face. Those who didn't know thought she was going to die in the next second. He handed her a bottle of mineral water and said, "Drink more water and talk less. We'll be there soon. Be obedient." Holding the water he handed over, Soo-yoon curled her lips and just looked at his profile quietly. After a while, her upper and lower eyelids started to fight, and she couldn't hold on anymore. Sci-Yao fell asleep unknowingly. Sci-Yao drove the car very attentively. After a while, he didn't hear any sound. He thought he was quite good. When he turned around, he saw that he had fallen asleep. Sci-Yao adjusted the air conditioner temperature, but the car speed did not slow down even half a minute. He felt extremely distressed when he thought that just now she had a fever, was already feeling uncomfortable, and was still holding on to fight with his grandma and aunt. I thought I could handle these trivial matters well and protect her from harm, but I still couldn't escape. Even though it had been many years since he moved out of C's house, and the old house was left to them, the annual food and clothing expenses were still allocated to them. It was really an over-the-top grant, but they still had to pester them endlessly, and they still wanted to go to Huanya. Want all the property of the entire Si family. Now, if he even comes here and on her head, then I really can't bear it. Suyun was in a daze. When she opened her eyes again, she saw nothing but white. She was stunned for a moment, her mind went blank for a moment, and she couldn't figure out where she was. Then she heard the sound of putting something down. Looking for the sound, she looked over and saw Si Yao with his back to her, putting something on the table. Is she fainting? Si. As soon as he opened his mouth, he realized that his voice was hoarse. He immediately stopped and wanted to clear his throat, but the sound was loud. Hearing the noise, Si Yao turned around and hurriedly came over to help her. Are you awake? I passed out, it's just a small cold and fever, it's not that big of a deal. When did her physical condition become so bad? No, you just fell asleep. I didn't want to wake you up, so I asked you to stay in the hospital first, he replied. Suyun. End of this chapter.